bro. K Diamond, son.
No, I haven't found the new one yet. I got to find the non-George Lucas sound effects. So
yeah, we don't need that.
You're dropping dime on us, man. You snitching.
That's all right.
Yo, I gotta be honest. Can I be honest right quick? So
I mean, don't lie to us.
So I'm in the backyard working on some stuff, and then I see the call come in from you guys, and I'm like, oh, yo, I totally spaced. Thank God I was at home, but I totally spaced that we were recording at this time.
Oh, okay.
So thank God, because I was gonna be like, yo, son, I'm fucking wherever. I was on my way to Lowe's. I would have been like, yo, I'm heading to Lowe's. That would have been whack. So my wife, thank God. So this is back to like bigging up my spouse. She was like, oh, go. I'll go to Lowe's and handle it. I was like, damn.
Nice.
So yeah, my wife's a G.
My wife got mad.
Real things.
My wife got mad at me today.
For fatherhood?
Yeah.
Oh, for saying something?
Are we causing drama?
For not saying something.
Oh, you stay getting in the doghouse for that shit.
What did you do? What was it this time?
Talking about which episode was she listening to? She was listening to an episode, I guess, where I was talking about my son at the soccer, like him taking off his shoes.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, there's sometimes where it's like we're having a conversation, right? And so, and it's sometimes it's the abridged version, right? I don't remember exactly what went down, but we're talking, we're just trying to get to the point and have the discussion about it.
Right.
So she was like, why? At first she thought I was trying to like save face for her and not say, exactly what she said. Because there was more to the conversation. Like when we were talking to our son, it got a little bit more heated. And I guess the way I explained it just made it seem mellow, but it wasn't necessarily mellow. And, she told my son that was stupid what he did. And then he all of a sudden took that. He started tearing up, and he's like, "Why did you just called me stupid? You said you would never say that kind of thing to me, And then she had to explain, "No, I didn't call you stupid. What you did was stupid." And those kind of things, like if a grown up told you to go do something that was messed up, that would be a stupid thing to do. Like you have to know not to do stupid things. So it got a little tense, right? And I forgot all about that when we were talking. When we were talking about it, and she came up to me, she's like, I appreciate you not trying to kind of sugarcoat it for me, and maybe share all that info. And I was like, well, I actually forgot what you just said. That you said that really wasn't the point I was trying to make when I was bringing that whole convo up.
Right.
And then I felt like she got mad at me because I really just forgot about it. You know what I mean? It was just like
I think, by the way, just for the
win on that one.
Just for the people listening, I think that was episode 43, if I'm not mistaken, where we had that conversation about. That was the one where your son was told to take his shoes off.
Yeah,
the soccer game, right?
Yeah. So point being, I guess the whole idea of sometimes with podcasting is funny because it's almost like we're in these conversations, and sometimes just like a normal conversation, you forget things, or you have a different point of view in your head to like lead the conversation, and you don't necessarily always get everything out. You either forget things, or you maybe leave some things out if it's too personal or whatever. I just think it's funny, but when people who are close to the actual event that happened hear these things, and it's like, well, why don't you say this, or why don't you add this in there?
You full of shit, Kay.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
That's get used to it as we do this more often. I'm still not used to that happening. That's why in Drink Champs, I created the phrase drunk facts.
Right.
And I tell people that means that we're either off by a year or off by a name, but it's more or less in the realm of reality what we were saying.
It's facts, ballpark. It's ballpark.
Right. In the ballpark.
I get that kind of shit all the time. I mean, my wife doesn't come down on me too tough because she knows I become a bit aloof normally about shit.
But, blonde.
Yeah, totally.
No disrespect to the blondes.
Well, I was actually born a blonde, so that explains a lot.
Okay.
Were
you really?
I was. I can show you pictures.
Nah,
I'm dead
get
ass.
out of here, bro.
I'm dead ass, bro.
Weird Dominican shit is that?
Yeah, I don't know. That's what happened, babe. So
they just threw sunning in your hair, man.
Nah, dog, you fucking crazy. But I do that a lot. Actually, like my wife doesn't listen to all the episodes anymore, but like cat, every now and again she'll hear me like when I'm putting the episode up on our distribution platform, and she'll start to hear little things, and she'll peek over and she's like, "Yo, but you forgot about this part of it and that," and I'm like, "Fuck, you're right." And they're like good takes, and I'm like, "Shit, man, I don't know. We just go."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's either you'll forget a part of the story. One thing that happens to me is I forget my vocabulary words. you know, you're like, you might have something in mind. You're like, man, I'm gonna kill this. I'm gonna say this, that, and the other. And then you get there and you're like, my name
Right.
is Eric.
Right.
I'm telling you, and
I just said and about 20 times in the one sentence.
And for anybody listening, if you've never been in front of a microphone and recorded, you wouldn't understand. Like, I mean, some people are naturals, but most people aren't. Yeah. And it takes some getting used to. But even like I've been doing Drink Champs for how long, or I've been doing stuff like this forever, and I'm still not used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like
like
Manny blondness just rubbed off.
You're welcome.
Nice.
So
yeah,
I wanted to get back into, because we kind of teased the audience in the last episode at the very end, because I kind of started with a loaded topic and we didn't really come to a conclusion. So I wanted to kind of rehatch what I mentioned. So I was saying that my son and I were watching television, and there was a dude on the TV, and I had made mention of the person on television. I was like, I don't know what we were talking about, but basically it was like, "Hey, what do you think that dude is doing?" Or something like that. And my son looks at me kind of perplexed, and I'm like, "Yo, what did I say something wrong?" And he looks at the TV and then looks at me and he goes, "How do you know that's a dude?" And I was like, "Fuck." My son's 6, right? So not fuck like anything bad per se, but I'm just shocked.
Oh wait, this was the ending of the last episode that we were gonna get into.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Welcome. So welcome.
So
I'm back.
It was more of a fuck, like, how do I start this conversation?
Yeah,
right? Or where is this conversation going?
Exactly. It overwhelmed me because honestly, for me, it's very complicated, the whole topic of gender in present day, right? With the whole, pronouns being a big part of
spectrum.
Gender, and the wide spectrum.
Right.
It's very. I'm honest, and every time I find someone of that community, I'm always very. You can't be too aggressive about like, yo, I want to know, because then they take it like it's you're trying to insult them or what have you.
Or like they're a zoo animal and you're like
exactly,
probing.
Yeah, like you're probing. So I can't claim to be very knowledgeable in all aspects of the LGBT. I think it's QI or IQ. There's an I in there somewhere, I think. Again, see, this is proof positive.
I mean, I think that's indicative of our generation as well.
Right. True.
Which we're still in the wrong most of the time when we talk. We're still saying inappropriate jokes and stuff like that.
Right.
So yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
So I'm trying to explain to my son why my point of view was the way it was, right? Why I called the person a dude, and we didn't get that deep into the conversation.
No, wait a second, real quick. Was your son, when you were whatever you were watching on TV, did the person?
Wait, were you watching Euphoria? Sorry, Kay.
Yeah.
Were you watching Euphoria? Because I want to talk about that show.
I have no idea what that is.
It's an HBO show, a new HBO show.
No, I have not watched it.
Okay, sorry.
Continue, Kay.
All right. Did the person look like a guy, and that's why you automatically said that's a dude?
Yeah.
And so someone who looks like a dude, your son was questioning, why would you automatically call him a dude even though he looked like a dude, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So it was like, a person with a beard,
right.
like little less than yours, Kay, and then obvious male features.
Okay.
And so that's why I called him a dude.
So then why would you? So yeah, I'm curious why your son would question that at this early stage of his life,
and that he's that hyper aware of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So here's what you got to understand about my son. My son is an asshole. My son's an asshole, much like
So
his
he
father.
was testing you,
Like
testing your what's it called? Oh my God, what's it called when you're like in the like you can't say things a certain way in comedy? They're always saying that we've lost it in society.
I'm not sure.
Political correctness.
Right.
Oh, yes, I think he was challenging that, but to be a dick, right? Like, because
right.
my son likes to catch because I mean, it's something that I do to my whole entire family, friends, everybody. I act that way, so I think he's picked that up.
You do, man? Nah,
Yeah, you never noticed.
Come mierda.
So, but he was very good about it, so I couldn't tell which way. Like, is this a serious conversation that we need to have, or are you just trying me? Right? I wasn't really. It wasn't clear to me. So, but I erred on the side of caution, and I'm trying to really explain and be mindful of what I'm about to say, and not like just take it lightly, right? Because I don't want him to think it's okay to play that way in general, because you really might offend somebody that's going through some stuff. So I'm explaining it to him, and the hardest part for me was like trying to dumb it down to a level that a 6-year-old could understand, right? Because sometimes it can be a little bit more. The words that I use might be a little bit too far out for him. So I'm explaining, and I'm like, da 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 da, and he's like, but there are some women with a beard, or facial hair is what he said, and I'm like, yeah, no, that's true. And I've heard some people refer to themselves as women that sound to me like what a man sounds like. And I was like, that is also true. And then we started having this conversation, and I got super uncomfortable. And I kind of just like said, look, the reason why I called this person a man is because he sounds like a man, has facial features that appear to be a man, and historically for me, that looks, and sounds like a man. And that's where we ended it. But I still didn't know which angle he was coming at me from, because I didn't get. I wasn't prepared to go deeper, so I cut it loose before, I even got more confused.
Yeah.
If you guys want to feel a little bit even more uncomfortable, but entertained at the same time, I advise you to watch the new HBO show Euphoria.
Okay.
Which I've been watching with my girl, and it's about basically, it's mostly revolved around drug addiction. But it feels like it's revolving around, like, it's mainly drug addiction, but it's like all kinds of addiction, sexual addiction and porn addiction, social media addiction. Like, it's just like what's plaguing young America today type of shit. But it's like a real deal show, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, and it has these whole, everything you're talking about. Like, there's a character that in the beginning you're just like, is that a girl? Is that a boy? And then, and the thing is, we're in a weird time, I think, in I don't know if it's society or in culture today, where, like I said, our generation, I feel like we're like we don't know what to do, and even and like, you ever feel like you might be like, man, I'm not homophobic, or I don't have anything, no ill towards this type of person, but then you do carry these old ways of being, where you say things, like gay jokes or whatever to your boys, and that if someone were to hear that, they would feel hurt by it or uncomfortable. For the most part, you might think so. It's like we're in a weird time, and hip hop kind of like perpetuated a lot of this stuff, but then look at hip hop going now in like a whole other direction. Like, we had Lil Nas X recently came out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But sorry.
No,
I would
ahead.
say
Go ahead.
The audience, or you, Manny, specifically, maybe not with your kid, because even for us as grown men, like, it was difficult for me to watch this show, because there's parts where I feel like we've had it so good as men, where they showed us naked women all the time in film, where now they're just mad dicks, just on this show.
Right.
Just, I mean, when I tell you mad dicks, it's cringeworthy. Like, for us, that we're not like,
used to seeing that.
I don't know that anybody should be used to that. But then again, like, it's like they'll be like, oh yeah, but you had pussy and tits all your life. Now it's like, now it was, we throwing it to the other direction now.
But that's a fact. Like, that's a fact. They're right.
It's a fact. And in your mind, like, any real human is gonna have real conversations in your own brain, like, yo, I can't watch this shit, But then you're like, but this is, film, and this is art, and they're trying to make a point, and you know, we've had this, you know, women had to sit there and watch Pussy and Tits.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's just watch it, and let's just see what this film's trying to convey to us, or this program, and take it for what it is. But watch it, man. But sorry, Kate, go ahead.
Wow.
Well, I don't even remember what I was going to
say. Mad dicks, yo. Mad dicks.
Jesus. Yeah, for real. That's now all I'm thinking about is mad dicks.
Yo.
Jesus. Thanks, E. Fucked up the whole episode now. We can't get back on task here.
But it's a well-made show, man, of tackling these things, and maybe we can all learn from it.
Maybe first you got to stop laughing. And then you can learn.
I've never seen you turn beet red like that, bro. Holy crap.
Yo, Manny, going back to just the uncomfortable factor of that conversation, I would feel uncomfortable too, not because of anything about anyone's preference. It's just, for me, I feel like, you know, you've got a young kid, right? My son is 6 going on 7.
Yeah.
I'm not talking to him about any kind of sex.
Nope.
Anytime right now, and I don't plan to unless, you know, he starts talking about it. I'm sure they're going to start his, you know, friends at school as he gets older. I mean, it's coming, right? But I guess the idea that I don't know, man. I just don't want to, like, I feel like the agenda of like pushing the sexual preference agenda so far in the public, that's, you know, it is what it is. But as far as kids go, me personally, I'd rather just, you know, when it's time to talk about sex and sexual preference, then that makes more sense for kids to kind of understand it more and understand all the kind of differences. But for him to just be scratching his head like, well, what is this all about, when I haven't even spoken to him about sex, period?
Yeah.
That's the uncomfortable factor for me.
I feel like there's a time and a place, right, for that conversation to just organically happen. And you can't, not that you can't, but I'm of the same mind. Like, don't push the shit, right? Let's just have the conversation when the shit organically manifests, and then start to deal with it. But it's so, or you don't even know what organic is anymore, because it's, you got like a 360 degree, you know, kids now have a 360 degree view into so many different things. And a lot of the times you're not even really able to monitor what it is that they're exposed to. So they're getting,
watch that show.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, everything you're talking about is in that show. I mean, it's obviously to an extreme, you know, because these shows have to give you a lot of information in a short amount of time, but it's tackling all these issues, man.
We should go talk to the executive producers, see if they want the Fatherhoods to give their spin.
Right. They should sponsor our show.
And we'll just show up, mad dicks in hand, and we'll just give them, we'll give them our perspective.
Yo, now let me ask you all a serious question. And being that Manny has boys and girls, I have a girl, you have a son, okay? Like, with the stuff that we carry from, you know, from what we've learned growing up, and maybe the biases or whatever the thoughts that we have, how do you think you're gonna tackle? And I feel like this is pushing it, like forcing you to tackle this to a degree, Manny. Like, how do you feel you're gonna tackle these things and like kind of explain these things to your children? With like, are you trying to be conscious of any bias you might have, or any ideas you might have, and you're trying to conform to today's ideas and ideals, or are you gonna, you know, like, I don't know, like, how does that work, man? Like, you know, there's some things that don't feel right, to be quite honest with you, that everybody's like, no, you need to be politically correct, or you need to conform to this. And some of these things I'm like, nah, I don't need to conform to it.
Right.
You know, I can be respectful of certain things, but I don't have to conform to other things.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and I can see
respectful is the key word there. It's like respecting and understanding, but doesn't necessarily mean that you have to conform if it doesn't feel like it fits your life and what you're trying to teach your kids, you know?
Right. Like, you don't bash anybody's way of life,
Right.
because it doesn't fit in your box. But
Right.
yeah, like how do you guys feel like you're gonna, like, how are you tackling that? Like, what is it that you're keeping and what are you trying to change? You don't have to get into detail, but what is it how do you think you're gonna be able to deal with this?
You want me to answer that? You're asking me?
Anybody.
I
The
mean,
other guy in the podcast. The fourth guy.
nah, I was giving Kay the floor, but I'm hyper conscious of my own biases, or at least I try to be, right? And I try as much as I can to not allow those to be passed on, as best I can. That's almost an impossibility for all of them to not pass on. But when it comes to having to deal with other folks, right, other people, I'd say fairness is my approach, right? And so I want my kids to understand when they're ready the whys of certain situations as best as I can explain to them. So, for instance, we have a gay family members, right? And so it's not like we don't interact with them because of their choices, because because the bulk of my family is heterosexual. We don't outcast them because of that. And when my kids see that relationship, well, at least at first, they were wondering, "Yo, what's up? This looks off. Why does this look off to me?" And we were having that conversation, and so it was difficult to have, but it was done honestly, right? And it wasn't like, we don't like them because they do that. You got to come over here. It was more like, just really basically explaining the aspect of people loving people at the end of the day. Right. So it's a lot easier for me these days than it was, I guess, that initial jumping off point. But for me, the world of homosexuality is a lot simpler to understand. And I might even be saying it wrong, but the way traditionally how we would look at homosexuality is a lot easier for me to explain and understand versus, and I just, to use an example, like how people prefer to be spoken about or to with respect to like a pronoun, right? That to me is very confusing to even have a conversation. So it's, it definitely is back to the same thing we talked about: fairness and respect above everything else.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I'm on the same page. I mean, I think the respect portion of it is the key, and that's been kind of our, I guess, laying the groundwork with him as he begins to grow older and start learning about differences in people. Like even just when he was younger, like, hey, you don't have to reference someone's difference because they might be bigger or thinner or their hair is different. And, even like starting to tackle, race talk and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of like the conversation just keeps evolving because there's so many different differences in people. And so I think we've just been trying to instill the respect level, first of all, in everyone's differences. But that doesn't mean that we have to conform to what society deems as like you got to do X, Y, and Z. So I don't know. It's a bit of a head scratcher just in terms of how to approach it, because also there's like I can have in my head like, oh yeah, the conversation's going to go like this at this time, and it's probably not going to happen that way. It's going to come from left field when I least expect it. He will have encountered something, or one of his friends will have told him something that I'm totally unaware of, and then it's all right, how do you explain this? And then
and ultimately it's what we want is for the best for our kids and for them to assimilate in society as best as possible. But what's scary about all these topics is that the political correctness landscape is constantly changing.
Right. Yeah.
So if you try to conform to that, it's like, you're going to miss a step and things are going to change in a different direction. That's why you should be kind of like sure in what your beliefs are. And I think, respect is the safest place. Just respect everybody. and their ideas and their thoughts and their way of living, as long as they respect you as well.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, but
at
that point, if it's disrespect toward you, it's beyond sexual.
No, that has nothing to do with this. It has nothing to do with none of this. But another thing too to think about, unfortunately, or not unfortunately, I'm just saying like where it complicates things, not unfortunately, is that like, for example, you've seen any of these stories about like parents where their kids tell them they feel like they're a different sex or they're different orientation, and then from a young age they start transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm like confused. Like that seems like such a
drastic steps,
complicated thing to deal with, and I don't know that I could be good with, having a kid start to, transition. Like I would, maybe in my mind, I'd wait till they were a certain age, closer to adult, like young adulthood, to be sure that they feel that way and that society isn't pulling them in one way or the other.
Right.
Out of pop culture shit, or obviously people who were, some people be like, man, that ain't no pop culture shit. Nobody wants to, have that orientation, knowing all the stigma that comes with it. But it's just such a complicated thing.
All right, let's pause on that and bring our guest in, because that opens up a whole nother long convo.
All right.
All right, folks. So we have Sacha Jenkins on the Fatherhood podcast with us today. So Sacha's, man, you're a filmmaker, author, journalist, musician, artist. Just, man, you've built a great body of work, man. And for those that don't know who he is, check out Of Mics and Men, the Wu-Tang documentary that he directed. 1865, the band. Check out Ego Trip, gang of stuff. So thanks for joining us, man.
Thank you, man.
Thanks for having me.
And most importantly, a father.
Yay.
Why are you here?
The most important gig I got.
Yeah, man.
For sure.
So
life-changing gig.
Yeah, so we like to kind of jump in first with our guests and just find out a little bit about what your family dynamic is.
Okay, well, I've been married close to 10 years to my wife, Raquel Cepeda, who is a filmmaker and writer in her own right.
Yep.
I'm a stepdad. Initially, our daughter, Jali, came into her life when she was 6. She is now 22 and a filmmaker in her own right. And then there's our son, Marceau, who just turned 7. Healthy, handsome young man who's very creative and smart, and we live in New York City.
Nice. So going into the stepfather combo first, Manny's got a daughter from his wife, and around the same age, right? That you came into her life, Manny?
Actually, I came into her life when she was 3.
Okay,
so just a little bit younger, yeah.
How was that transition for you, Sacha? Just in terms of, I mean, were you kid friendly prior to that? Did it take a while to kind of glue the family together and be in that mode?
I mean, for me, as someone who, grew up in a single parent household, my parents, they didn't really work out, and then eventually my father passed away when I was pretty young. So the dynamic of having an additional adult in the mix was something that I always wanted as a kid, and it was always something that I was sensitive to. So when I came into the situation, it was something that I was sensitive to and understood the possibilities in terms of what it is that I could provide. Her biological father is in her life, so it's not like she didn't have access to, a father. But in terms of someone being there full time living with her, me coming into the mix was new for her and new for me. But again, as a kid who always wanted, both parents and wanted a somewhat stable situation, for me, it was something that I embraced and dove into the best that I could, trying to be cognizant of the fact that, she has a biological father. So there are certain things that I am not, but there are lots of things that I am and can be. So here we are.
And how did you guys, in terms of the biological father, how has that relationship between the two of you worked out through the years? Have you had to deal with them much?
Well, we've known each other. We've known each other. Ironically, we, knew each other from a whole separate circle. He was in punk bands before me. So,
Okay.
He was a brother on the scene a little bit before me. So we had friends in common and knew each other, but, my wife is not in that mix at all. So it's just random how things work out in life, but I don't think anything happens by accident. So it feels like it was meant to be, but I've got no issue with the brother. I respect him, and he's a cool dude.
Nice.
That's dope. How hard was it, Sacha, for you? Because again, I'm in that same situation, and I guess I can't say that my daughter's biological dad is really much in the picture. He's around, but vaguely is ever seen or heard from. So for me, that's a benefit. That's a little easier for me as I'm raising her. But having the biological be present, did that present challenges to you, or how was that? How did that evolve?
I mean, not to put it all out there, but my wife and he didn't have the best relationship, which happens. It's why people don't stay together.
Right.
So, but that really didn't affect, our daughter's relationship with him. She had and continues to have a very direct relationship with him. So to me, what's most important is that she's in a good place, with both figures. And, I kind of play my position, there again, as someone who comes from a situation where, my father wasn't in the mix, A, because my parents split up, and B, eventually he died. There's just, and I don't know what it's like for you. I mean, I guess again, like you said, it's different because the guy wasn't in the picture at all.
Right.
Although her biological lived, in another state, it's not like they weren't in touch, or he, didn't reach out, or they didn't see each other. It wasn't like that. So for me, I just tried to play it like, yo, you have your dad, you have me. We're two different people offering two different perspectives. I'm in the home with your mom. I'm doing what I can to play my position and try to help you grow. And, today she, works with me on my films and my projects, and she helps her mom with her projects as well. So I don't know. I don't know what to say. Like, I'm not really, drama is easy to find in life. Some people thrive off it, but I think that we've done a great job of, there's no reason for the drama.
Right.
It's just not necessary. Who has time for that?
Yeah, it's a good way to look at it.
I think that's dope because, like you put it perfectly. People, especially, I feel like, I guess your prototypical dude, right? They would approach a situation like that and likely feel like they need to act a certain way, or the machismo might set in, or some bullshit might pop up where you have to like assert yourself in a particular way because now you're pretending to be like the one, but in reality now she's got two. So, and that's a benefit to her, you know what I'm saying? But some people might not look at it that way. So that it's dope that you've been able to accept that and play your position like you mentioned.
I mean, what's the other choice? Like,
and it's called maturity too.
You try to step in and be. I mean, again, I always try to look at it from like my own eyes and my own position as a kid, what I would have wanted and what I would have wanted to avoid the best I could. And when you're a kid, your parents split up. You don't understand. For years, you're mad at your father. Then later, you're mad at your mother as you become a man and you understand how things work out. But at the end of the day, as an adult, you realize, shit happens. People don't get along for various reasons. People are moving at different speeds, and sometimes it's better that people split apart. Mm-hmm. So all I tried to do is create the best possible situation for her. I mean, any of the relationships, my relationship with her mom or her relationship with her dad, like, that shouldn't get in the way of my relationship with her and trying to maintain something that's positive.
So not having your dad around when you were growing up, it was the same for me. And I think what I noticed when I had my son is that upbringing, like I didn't even know if I really missed it that much when I was a kid, because you're just like, this is your life. This is what it is. If you come from a single household, at least for me, it was just, this is my normal, I live with my mom. This is kind of my normal flow. When I had my son, the not having that dad influence in my life, at least in the earlier years, put a kind of a battery in my back to just like want to be extra present and want to, go above and beyond as best as I could. You feel that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, you, again, like going back to my daughter, looking at my own life and my own situation and wanting to create the best possible situation, one that's different from my own. I mean, there's so many things I could have learned quicker had I had a male role model in my life that could have pointed me in the right direction from business to relationships. And I didn't have that advantage. So, I try to make sure that my son has that advantage. And, you look at the holes in the fence of your life and, you want to make sure that those same holes don't cross over to your kid. I mean, you can't change the way the world works. You can't make people stick together. You can't keep people alive if they die. But in your own time and on your own time, you can do your best to try to improve on what you didn't have. That's the whole point of having kids. Like, you want them to have what you didn't have. You want them to advance in ways that you didn't. Like, even, going to school in New York City, my mom was an immigrant. Like, she didn't really understand the school system. And, New York City schools are terrible, particular ones. So the involvement that my wife and I have with our kids' school and understanding the system, we're way more engaged in terms of his education and what he needs to get done than my mom. She didn't understand. Right. She didn't even understand any of that stuff.
Right.
And I look at how being engaged and understanding the system, had my mother understood that, my educational system, my educational experience or my feelings towards education might have been different.
Yeah.
So being involved, looking at the things that I didn't have and trying to make sure that my kid has what I didn't have is the most important thing.
Let me ask you though, one thing, and I had a similar situation as well with my father being absent for most of the time. One of the things that I worry about now raising my daughter, and I kind of pose this to everybody here as well, is there an emotional like hole that I need to worry about in terms of how I deal with my child? Am I gonna have missteps due to my shortcomings because of whatever emotional toll that had on me not having my father around? Do you ever feel that there's something there that needs to be fixed?
Definitely. But it's almost like when you look at your kid, initially I was looking at my kid and looking for me and my kid, right? In terms of, does he think like me? Is he into what I'm into? And then you eventually realize that, like, yeah, there might be some similarities, but really he's his own person. And once you realize that, then you realize that he's his own person. He's going to make his own mistakes. He's going to have his own beliefs. In the same way that I have my flaws and the things that affected me and made me who I am based on my life experience and how I was raised. Even with me and his mom doing the best that we can together, there are things about myself that I don't even understand that are going to affect him.
Right.
So all you can do is, try your best. I don't think there's like a manual for any of this stuff. And you try your best and you try not to make the same mistakes, but you're going to make mistakes. And it's almost, in my golden years, like I try to tell young people, like, mistakes are the best because, obviously you don't want mistakes that are tragic.
Right.
But mistakes are good because they're not mistakes when you study them and you don't repeat the behavior. So, you want to be cautious. You want to make sure your kid doesn't hurt himself and do this, and that. But sometimes you also have to let them make those mistakes. And I'm trying to make sure that my kids don't have the same issues and make the mistakes that I make. But it's entirely possible, based on what I've been through, that I don't even understand. Those things may affect who they become.
Was your mom supportive of you going down the creative path, or did she have thoughts of any other career move for you?
Well, it's interesting. My mom is a painter, and my dad was a filmmaker. So
right.
I literally became my parents.
Yeah.
I am a complete reflection of who they are. At the same time, my Haitian mom is still asking me, when am I going to graduate from college? So, people in my family, at least, I have cousins, people went to Cornell and this school and that school. And the way I learn is on the job. So I got a fellowship to the Graduate School of Journalism at Columbia University some years ago. So that kind of calmed her down a little bit. But I think at the end of the day, she understands who I am and is proud of how I turned out, and how else would I turn out based on who my parents are.
Right. And you seem to be constantly creating. How have you been able to balance everything that you're doing work-wise with family time, and how are you making that work? Because that's something that we're always
I'm definitely struggling with that right now.
Well, for me, I try to find ways to incorporate my creativity into my work. So, storytelling is at the core of what I do. So if I'm writing something, or, directing something, or even making music, at the core of that is writing. So, I'm going to put out a record anyway. My partner at Mass Appeal finds out. He says, "Why didn't you run it by me?" I was like, "Well, Rock, I don't know if you're interested in that." So it makes sense for Mass Appeal to support me as chief creative officer, because me being creative only stimulates more creativity. It inspires other people on the team to be creative. And, the more I can break through as a creative person and an artist, at the end of the day, the business benefits from that. So I've been able to create an environment where my creativity is paramount. If I'm in a situation where I'm not being creative, I'm going to be depressed. Like I need to channel my energy through my creativity. That's like, that's my capital, is my creativity. That's what's in the bank. I mean, obviously, I'm, putting some other zeros in the bank too by working, but the bank, in terms of my creativity, my creative capital, that's the thing that's kept me alive. That's what feeds my family. That's what's kept me going all these years.
We always find it difficult. We have this conversation, and EFN in particular, I know, struggles with this. How have you gone about kind of creating that process where you allow yourself the space to be creative when you have
get in that zone, basically?
Right. When you have the family unit, which sometimes can be unpredictable, their needs might be unpredictable. How do you
without feeling guilty?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
right. I mean, these days, like, I don't really, I'm super busy, so I don't have much time for like a social life, right? I'm not on a bowling team. I work long hours. So, my wife understands, like, my thing for me is music. I'm in a band. I play shows. Sometimes I'm out of town. Sometimes I'm in the studio, and sometimes I'm sitting on a white bench in my house and I'm working on music. Like, that's my thing for me. Her thing is boxing. She loves boxing. She trains, she boxes, that's her thing for her. So I found a way to make the things that I'm inspired by or push my creativity, music. That's my thing for me. And so I've found a way to incorporate my passion in my overall mission. This Wu-Tang film that I just directed, we wanted to get a Rage Against the Machine song. We reached out to them. We couldn't clear it. Guess what? 1865 gets a sync in my film. You know, that's not what it wasn't my goal. I wanted Rage Against the Machine, but we had a song that would work good enough to sort of create the illusion of this is a moment that involves rock and roll. So that's a perfect example of how I'm finding ways to channel my creativity into projects, into what my day job is. And I realize that is a real luxury. Not everyone has the ability to do that. I mean, people I grew up with don't really understand my life. I run into them. Many of them look a lot older than they are. You know, they don't have the luxury and benefit of what I have. So I'm very blessed. Meanwhile, my wife is calling me right now because she's in the laundry room right now. Can we pause for 1 second?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yep.
Hey, I'm back.
Yo, all good, man. So, going back to when you're in that creative mode. So let's say you're in the crib and you wanna work on some music, but you're in the creative zone, but your son really wants to play or do something. What's your
approach?
Yeah, how do you work that out?
Well,
or does your son get in on the music with you?
A little bit. He's getting more curious about it, but he's got to go to sleep at a certain point, you know. So you try to balance it where, you know, he gets his time in and I get mine. But you know, he doesn't fully understand.
Right.
He asked me, like, why do you keep playing that song over and over again? And I explained to him practice is important. So there are things he can pick up in me doing my thing. But it's balance.
Yeah.
Gotta find a way to balance it.
You sound so zen about it. You're just like, yeah. Like,
it's definitely not that zen over here on this side of
me just thinking about like, if I'm in your shoes, you know, and Kay asked me that question, I'm getting stressed out just thinking about how I would approach it, because I'm terrible at working past, you know, my kids' sleep time. Like, I don't have a lot of creative juices flowing. So for me, it's really difficult. So I got to remove myself from the equation.
But it comes at different times. You know what I mean? Sometimes at night you don't have it.
Right. Sometimes.
You know?
Right.
Sometimes you don't have it at night. I mean, I keep guitars in my office. So if inspiration comes, I plug in and just record whatever on my phone. So you can't really control when it comes.
Yeah.
It comes when it comes.
Right. So here's something that we ask most of our guests as well, and this goes to the music portion. Do you, I guess, you know, your daughter's older, your son's just kind of, I guess, starting to pay attention to music. Do you police the content around them, or when you were raising your daughter, did you guys pay attention to, you know, not letting them hear certain lyrics or having to explain things at a certain time? Or what's your approach with that?
Yeah, I mean, we've tried to not play songs with curses, but, you know, you're listening to Sirius Radio, you turn the dial and there's hip hop with, you know, all kinds of curses. You know, I'm the guy who's not really playing hip hop in the car, but eventually people get tired of listening to Neil Young and all the other stuff I play. So I try to, you know, have a balance. And so now he's at that point where he thinks cursing is funny. I think all kids go through that phase.
Yeah.
So he's starting to understand the impact and what it means. So I think now, you know, I'm slightly more comfortable playing songs that might have one or two curses. But I've been trying to avoid it, honestly, because, you know, hip hop in particular, I mean, you have to have a certain level of sophistication to understand what everything really means, even if it's on a base level, it feels like it means something.
All right.
You know, to understand why people are rapping the way they're rapping and what they're rapping about. You know, he's just learning all this stuff. So, you know, his hip hop diet is starting to grow, but for the longest, I've been trying to curb that.
Was it the same with your daughter?
You know, she was, you know, older, so I'm picking up where I left off with him. You know what I mean? He's like a year older than she was when I came in her life. So
Yeah.
From what I recall, it was the same kind of process. I think we were consciously trying to avoid it, and then at a certain point, it's unavoidable.
Yeah, it's hard to explain the context, especially when they're young and they just hear the words. It's like you don't want them repeating it, and they don't really fully get what the hell it's all about.
Especially when some of the music now is just repeating it.
Right.
Yeah, recycle rap. I have a question for you, and this is probably my final question. So you've got a 20-some-odd-year-old daughter, and you've got a 7-year-old son. I'll call it like the puberty hashtag or slash, I should say, sexual discussion. How did that go, or how did that come about with your older child? And what are you expecting, or have you even had any semblance of a conversation regarding sex in any type of way?
Well, with the eldest, her mom handled that.
Nice.
I think that was the best way to address that. And then with this guy, I mean, it's interesting, man. It's like they start doing things you don't understand how they know these things or where they're getting it from. Are they getting it from school? Or are they getting it just because they're humans and this stuff is all baked into us? So there are things that are starting to come out now that are going to lead to that conversation. We're not all the way there yet, but he's starting to put together how things work, and now we have to come in and kind of give him more information. But it's interesting what he's picking up through popular culture, school, all that other stuff.
Yeah,
I think they're picking up things way quicker than us. Even like how they just feels like it's so natural when they work with like electronics and gadgets. I'm useless in that regard, but he can like pick up something for the first time and figure it out. It's almost like we're evolving in ways because of technology. It's just kind of crazy.
Well, we were having this discussion before you came on about gender and sex conversations. And Manny, why don't you fill him in real quick on what your son asked you? And your son is 6.
Yeah, my son's 6, and we're watching TV, and I see a gentleman on the screen, and I refer to him as this dude is doing something. I kind of describe what was happening, and then my son questioned, "How do you know that's a dude?" And that just blew my entire mind.
Whirlwind.
Yeah. So.
But why did he ask that? Based on the look?
Right.
Like, where did that come from?
So, I mean, the guy had obvious male features. I mean, it wasn't something about the look that would necessarily drive someone to ask the question. But my son, I was explaining this to folks earlier, my son's a bit of a dick like his dad. And so sometimes he just wants to be a dick and like really press me on things to see how I respond. So knowing that, gender generally is like a hot topic in and around society, I think he's picked up on that to some degree and used it as an opportunity to kind of challenge me to see what I would say. So we got into it a little bit, just to try to, give him some clarity on the serious tip. But I had to withdraw because, frankly, I'm confused to a degree when it comes to getting too deep into the topic.
Yeah, I mean, the world is changing pretty quickly, and attitudes are changing, and this new generation has a completely different attitude. I mean, Lil Nas X came out the other day. I mean, coming up in hip hop in the time when we came up, it's like that would never happen.
Right.
So it's a completely different time, and so they're coming of age at this. Technology is advanced. How people view themselves is evolving. Like, it's hard to keep up with the different classifications and how people want to be recognized. It's hard, right? Because we're from a different time.
Right.
And he has similar questions to your son and likes to push buttons, right? But he's just looking at what seems to be the quote unquote norm. And then he's looking at other things that are now being presented to him as the norm, because that's where society is now.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to see where his family fits into all that, how his family feels about that. where he sees himself in that. And I think that, you know, quite honestly, when it comes to sexuality and identity and all these things, their generation is going to see it completely different than we do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
That's just something that we have to accept as people coming from a different time, and times are changing. I can't begin to understand it or fully describe it. I just have to accept the fact that this is where things are going, and the world is changing, and there's a broader way for people to classify and identify, and the world is embracing that. So you're learning along with your kid.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, honestly.
Does it ever feel though that the pendulum swings in a whole other direction, and that sometimes the correction is in the middle, but because it was one way, then it swings the other way? Like we were also, one of the other topics we were bringing up is that what would happen, you know, there's instances recently and in recent years where young children that felt they were, you know, the different sexual orientation, and then the parents, you know, started helping them transition at a very young age. And we were trying to figure out, like, how does someone deal with that? Is that even right at a certain age? Like, you know, I don't know. What do you have a take on that? Do you even feel like something you'd want to respond to?
I mean, parents can parent how they want to parent. I think
right. It's everybody's right.
The thing about being a parent, you can make those choices. Me personally, I would encourage my kid to sort of be at a certain age to make that kind of decision.
Right.
You know, I'm not saying that parents who are making that decision are wrong. I'm just saying, for me and my family, if I faced a situation like that, I would be, you know, in control of the situation because I'm a parent, and I would just, you know, try to best understand my kid and explain to my kid, like, listen, you're feeling these feelings for a reason, most likely. And when you're of a certain age, if you got to make moves, no one's going to stand in your way. I think right now, at your age, you know, school and other things, being a kid, you know, is probably more important than the other stuff at this juncture.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, but that's just my opinion. Other people roll a different way, and that's cool for them.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. That was easier than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
we tabled that one.
Yo, Sacha,
well, on that note, Sacha, we appreciate it, man. Don't want to take up all your time. I know you're busy. So, but yeah.
Oh, good.
Appreciate you chopping it up.
You guys are like mad serious, like serious dads.
Like man.
We dad hard.
Like we need this. This is
it's our little therapy session.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, you know, we generally came, all three of us, from mostly single parent households, and you know, being a dad is important to us, and you know, as people grow older, and especially in a hip hop generation, it's, you know, it's good to be able to talk with like-minded folks about all this.
Word up.
Yeah, well, hip hop is that's the real issue. That's a whole other separate podcast. But cool. Thank you for hollering at the dad, and I look forward to checking it out. When's it gonna run?
In
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Cool.
Yep.
All right.
All good,
appreciate
man.
you, man. Thank you.
Stay classy, gentlemen. We'll talk soon.
All right. Appreciate it, Sacha.
Peace.
Good night.
Thank you. Yep.